use this mic.
Closer. Does it work? Okay, we'll switch. That works. Okay, amazing. So again, my name is Nora Haider. I'm the Assistant Director of the Stanford Legal Design Lab. And we'll be sharing some tips and tricks today about improving your legal help website. I'll let my co-presenters introduce themselves. Aaron?
Hi, I'm Aaron Varner. I'm a staff attorney at Texas Legal Services Center, and we run texaslawhelp.org.
Let's see if this microphone works, and it does. I'm Martha Beard Duncan. I'm also at Texas Legal Services Center, and I'm managing attorney for Texas Law Help.
I'm Kathleen Cole. I'm with the Arizona Bar Foundation. I'm the Legal Information and Access Director. And the Arizona Bar Foundation runs 8 public legal education websites. So I'll just be touching on a couple of those today.
So for today's session, we'll share a bit about the Legal Online Help cohort. That's where we all met, and our Legal Online Help dashboard. And hopefully we'll be able to give you some actionable strategies on how to improve your legal help website and to share some bits about what we've been doing these past 2 years. So today we'll be discussing 4 things. We'll be discussing content and information architecture, user experience design, technical performance, and discoverability and SEO. So just to briefly share something about the Online Legal Help cohort and dashboard, it's a cohort of about 30 active participants. We're actually in the process of also recruiting new members. If you're interested, feel free to scan the QR code on the presentation deck. We started in 2021, and what we basically do is we have monthly meetings where we share technical assistance, webinars, tips and tricks, and just ongoings about online legal help. You can visit our website for all the tools that we'll be mentioning in this presentation, or if you're, again, interested in joining the cohort. So as mentioned, today we'll be discussing content and information architecture, how to improve your content, how to improve your design, some tips and tricks about technical performance and discoverability and SEO. And with that, I'll hand it over to Kathleen for our first portion on content and information architecture.
Okay, so in this track, we're going to discuss, like Nora said, content and information architecture. Then I'm going to pass it over to Martha and Aaron to discuss projects they have going on in Texas, and then we'll discuss some tips and tricks. Sorry. So the first thing that we always ask at the foundation is your content presented in a friendly and engaging manner? I could do an entire session on plain language, but I'm just going to do 1 or 2 little bullet points. When it comes to plain language, you got to make sure your content is concise, that complex legal terms are defined, and when that definition isn't enough, are you providing enough tangible examples for people to relate to? When it comes to your legal topics, is everything being covered properly? Does the taxonomy make sense to the user? And then does your taxonomy actually match that of your partners as well? We have courts in Arizona that put name change information in civil, and they put it in family law. So how do you make sure that once they leave your site, they're finding accurate information outside of your website? Is your content organized in a logical flow of information? And then one thing that we are actively working on is getting rid of that wall of text. When people see sentence after sentence, paragraph after paragraph, they get intimidated and they just turn off and leave your site. So we have started to institute question and answer formatting. And we make sure that we also implement actionable items that help empower the user so they can walk away knowing about their rights or what their next steps should be. And then the last is making sure that your content is searchable. And then, so making sure you have meta keywords and category tags embedded within your content. But also, one thing that we do is we look at the search results not only in Google Search Console, but within our site itself. Once the user gets to your site, analyzing that content to see what people are looking for is really important to making sure that you're providing enough information for your user. And then next, your content needs to be appropriate, accurate, and accessible. Are you addressing your audience's needs? Are your users in crisis? Because that can really impact the design and the organization of your content based on what the topic is. Another thing to consider when it comes to considering your audience is over 73% of adults over the age of 65 are using 4 hours or more of screen time a day. So what are you doing to accommodate those users as well? I think majority of us, when we design initially, it's always for our own demographic. So keep that in mind that a lot of older users are using our websites. When it comes to accuracy, making sure that you audit your content on a regular basis and making sure that it's relevant to your jurisdiction and your users. Accessibility we'll go into in another slide, but one of my favorite quotes is, "Nobody ever claims that something was too easy to read." We try to make sure that our content fits like a 5th to 8th grade reading level, but when it comes to legalese, it's really difficult. So like I said, examples and definitions throughout the way.
So, speaking of translating legalese into plain language, I'm going to talk a little bit about our translation project, and then Erin will go into a bit of the ways that TLSC has been playing with AI. So we had to translate our website basically from legalese so that we could then translate it into Spanish and Vietnamese. I used a lot of old school pre-AI methods for that. So really we did our translation and improvement in 3 main phases. We launched the translation project about 2.5 years ago, and that was before ChatGPT and generative AI really exploded onto the scene. That's not to say we didn't actually use AI in this project at all, because we did, but a lot of this work had to be done by humans. There is still, in fact, a place for us human lawyer people. The thing is, I didn't want any subpar content, and we follow a lot of, or at least aspire to, the guidelines that Kathleen was talking about. I didn't want to have subpar content translated, and so we built that into the project. Our development director had wanted to pursue high-quality translation, as had I, into Spanish and Vietnamese, and that sounded great to me. Texas is, of course, home to millions of Spanish speakers, many of whom speak it as a first language or are even monolingual. But the thing is, Texas Law Help, like a lot of law help websites, had been around for 20+ years. And a couple of redesigns ago, a bunch of clunky, unhelpful content had been uploaded by temps. Had lots of inaccessible content like "click here" and clickbaitish phrases like "and more," which is not really helpful or accessible. Like if you're going to have something read out loud for visually impaired users, for instance, "click here" doesn't really tell them anything. And so also the temps had done things like cut and paste tables of content from agency publications, and I certainly didn't want that translated. Now I would have liked to have scrapped some of it completely, but that would have tanked our SEO. And we had already taken a bit of a hit after our redesign. Our site looked better, but our footprint was slightly smaller. And that meant keeping it, which led us to phase 1 of this project, which was the content rewrite. Game planned that out. We chose a vendor who could do mirror sites. Like all of us out there, we have limited resources in terms of doing the translations, and we update our content so often that it was impossible for Texas Legal Services Center staff and volunteers to keep up. So we needed something The vendor we went with, Motion Point, hires professional translators, and they can do mirror sites so that everything we do is crawled so that we don't have to manually update it or manually notify people that the content needs to be translated. We coordinated with our web developer, a company called Four Kitchens, which had handled our redesign to make sure it would work, and it would. So we set about flagging content for revision, which I'll talk a little bit about on the next slide. And meanwhile, while our content audit and cleanup were going on, professionally created a glossary in Spanish and another in Vietnamese were created. Our Spanish-speaking staff had a lot of input into that. Multiple dialects were considered. We partnered with Boat People SOS for the Vietnamese content. They specialize in legal aid to Vietnamese diaspora populations. Motion Point's AI, and here's one place AI comes into play, trained on Texas Law Help and the glossaries. So going forward, our Spanish language content with a pretty high degree of confidence is machine translated. We still have post-translation human review of the Vietnamese content just because it is not as widely spoken a language. Eventually we hope to have enough confidence in that we can dial it back. Our mirror sites went live in August. Used two subdomains, es.texaslawhelp.org and vi.texaslawhelp.org. Some of the tools we used, and you can talk about some of these too, but we used SharePoint and Planner to organize the content. To dial down the reading level, we use tools such as Grammarly and my personal favorite, the Hemingway app, which is very simple, totally free. ChatGPT exploded into being, or at least to the public, probably about 3/4 of the way into this, and I played around with it to try to summarize articles that hadn't been summarized, but I found that I was spending so much time perfecting prompts that this was just an area where humans could do the work a bit better. So, with the help of staff and some rewrite contractors, we rewrote hundreds of articles, and I will say that I've learned a lot at this conference. For example, that you can use ChatGPT to come up with SEO-friendly language. So I think going forward, that is something that we'll try out as we write the summaries for these articles. But I'll go ahead and hand it over to Aaron. I'll show you first our before and after, both before the redesign and the rewrite, and then after both. So we came away through this project win-win with content that was actually useful and helpful and didn't say click here or and more. So Aaron can talk a little bit more about the ways TLSC has been playing with AI.
So I'll try and go quickly through this because we're limited on time and y'all have probably heard a lot about AI at this conference so far. But what I want to emphasize is just how easy it was to come up with like a B-grade bot that isn't quite ready for release, but it's so close, I feel like we might be able to get it there. Maybe not, but we've been playing around with an AI legal navigator. By that I mean just a bot that tells people where to find information and summarizes information from texaslawhelp.org because it's a very big site and it can be difficult to find things. And we've mostly been playing with ChatGPT 4.0. We also have been experimenting with LawDroid, but I haven't really gotten to dive too deeply into that yet. That does run on 4.0 as well. But hopefully that will give us a little more control so we can publish something in the future. Maybe next year we'll be able to talk more in depth about that. But basically, you get yourself a ChatGPT Plus account, and you just click that button. My GPTs create, and you're halfway there. It walks you through creating an avatar. It asks you what you want the bot to do. You describe the mission of the bot, and then it's just a matter of tweaking and testing. After that, you have the bot. So this is just a quick example of the first question I asked it and where we're at now, asking it the same question. I asked it, how do I expunge my record? And at first it gave me information on a housing resource, which was not relevant. Now, after working on those directions for honestly just a couple days, it summarizes Texas Law Help content that is relevant to the question. So. And the thing to really think about is that whenever it asked what I wanted the bot to do in creating it, I just told it what the bot was supposed to do. Summarize Texas Law Help content and give links to people who aren't lawyers is the short of it. But I didn't really give it any guidelines. We didn't tell the bot how to reach that goal. And it showed, like, it needs more instructions. And so what we did is we started asking it a bunch of questions, and when it gave us bad information, we just went in and edited those instructions, which run basically as a prompt in the background that apply to every chat. So we started off with a very short paragraph of instructions. Now we have several sections. They do limit you at 8,000 characters at this point, which I didn't think I'd hit that so easily, but I did. I'd love to write, a 20-page manual to tell this bot exactly what I want it to do, maybe someday. But so the purpose, just a couple examples of what we include in our instructions. The purpose is just almost exactly what I wrote at the very beginning: summarize and find information, describes the audience. We went to a lot of detail about where we wanted to get the resources that the bot relies on, including the type of legal resources and questions we wanted it to answer. So limit it to civil, Texas law, only get information from content that we uploaded. You can upload PDFs into the system as well, and texaslawhelp.org. And it actually does a live Bing search, and I don't know how. You hear a lot about how the information cutoff is about a year old for 4.0, I think. But it's doing live Bing searches and getting information, as far as I can tell, from our live site. I don't know how deep that goes, but it's pretty interesting, and I'm playing with that more to see exactly where it's going. And also, we put in a section for people who describe themselves as being in abusive situations. We wanted to be sure that they got resources that might be helpful for them. And basically, though, just ask a bunch of questions, try to break your bot, get weird with it. Ask normal questions, but, troll your bot, basically. And which brings me to kind of an aside. I've been working on this project, and it made me think about how safe do we really want to work to make these bots? Ideally, they'd be a perfectly usable resource that's 100% safe for everybody to use. We definitely don't want to give innocent people bad information or information that will harm them. But we're always going to have trolls, and the more guide rails that we put on these bots, the less useful they are. And so there's just a couple things when you think about how we want to limit these bots going into the future. It's like, if somebody really works hard and really gets bad information out of your bot on purpose, how will that affect your site's reputation? And that's probably the big one, honestly. There's also an issue of legal liability, but that's, at least at this point, a little less, because a lot of the protections that apply to just social media in general, it looks like they do apply to online AI interactions, and if that ever changes, that's going to be huge. But that's the direction that it's going right now. And so I'd love for you to test out this bot. I'm sorry, there's not a QR code. I'm a little behind on that. But if you go to that URL, you can test out the bot. And also, if you go to that Google Doc, those are the instructions that the bot is running on. It's marching orders. And you'll just see how easy it is to do. It's crazy easy how this was to set up for the product that we already have. So.
And then for some other tips and tricks besides trolling your bot, we have a couple of tools that are available on legalhelpdashboard.org. First, I want to shout out the people from Ohio Legal Help, because they shared a wonderful content guide with us. And Susan, I can see you sitting there. So this is one of the reasons why the cohort is so fantastic. One of our cohort members was in the process of revamping their content and information architecture, and Susan was kind enough to share the style guide, and now we with her permission, of course, have published it on our website as well. So that's definitely something you can take a look at. We also have our content action plan and our keyword research plan, where you can read more about how to connect search keywords through either Search Console and analytics with your content to drive more traffic to your website. And I'll hand it over to Kathleen for some tips and tricks when it comes to Microsoft tools.
So when our organization first got SharePoint, my thought was, what exists in this platform? And so through that, we've discovered a few tools that I think are more the lesser known tools. One of the most that we use is Planner. Planner allows your team to establish boards where you can organize tasks and related to new and ongoing projects. You're able to attach documents that exist within SharePoint. You're able to attach images and then leave comments back and forth. You can assign it to a person, and you can even assign like a due date. It's very helpful. Visio is similar to Lucidchart. It just doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It's a place where you can design flowcharts. You can collaborate on them jointly. You can share them out. But it's a nice tool that's included in SharePoint. And then Engage. I guess the best descriptor is this is Microsoft's internal social media platform. Our legal service team uses it for our hit by a bus moments. So we list things in there like, if I'm not available, the chat operator calendar gets changed on the 5th of every month, and here's the link to the Google Doc. So it just is a place where we can place all of that information in a central hub, and nobody has to go searching for it.
And as for our second track, which will focus on user experience design, we have also a wonderful case study from Arizona that we will walk you through. So when it comes to user experience design, we look at things like font size, clear navigation, headers, and banners, but what we basically mean by that is, do you have a cohesive design language? So this is not the moment to use Comic Sans or a different font on every single web page. Have you sat down with your team and really walked through what font are we using? What font size are we using for specific paragraphs? What are we highlighting? What are we not highlighting? These seem really basic and mundane and maybe even boring questions, but they are very important if you want to create a website that's clear and user-friendly for your user. So as for our case study for this track, we'll focus on Arizona Crime Victim Help, so I'll hand it back to Kathleen.
So AZ Crime Victim Help was launched in 2021. This website is for victims of crime that have a legal issue that's came from that crime. So for instance, your house is broken into, and now not only do you have to deal with that, but you're a victim of identity theft. How do you tackle that situation? So when it came to designing for this site, we knew that most of our users would be in crisis. And we had to be very intentional not to use jarring images or colors. It had to be welcoming and friendly. So one of the things we did is we went out and we hired a wonderful graphic designer who worked with us to develop the color palettes, and she developed an incredible graphic library, because I'm sure most of you know, you go to stock photos or you try to go online for legal imagery, and a lot of it is very, I don't even know the term, but it just doesn't fit with your need all the time, and especially with a site like this. So we, and in working with our designer as well, we went through and talked about how we need to be very intentional about like lists or buttons, specific call-outs, so that people knew what was important and what they could just skim past if they were not in a stage to take all of that stressful information. So one thing we start out with all of our pages is an empathetic statement, and then one or two sentences just following up what the content contains. And then trying to make sure that there's a logical flow to the content as well. So one thing that was done, there's a page on ending a marriage. And for general legal content that apply to any type of ending a marriage, it spanned the entire page. But as a user, if you wanted information on divorce, it was on the left-hand side, and if you wanted legal separation, it was on the right. So everybody got the same information, but you only had to focus on half of the page. So it was very well done, used a lot of white space, a lot of graphics, broke it up. And because we did that, and I think because we did that, AZ Crime Victim Help has one of our highest page time retentions. So the average user spends over 2.5 minutes on each page, whereas some of our other sites, it's 1.5 minutes. Or I looked up Forbes, their average reader is only on their pages for 53 seconds. So people are staying on the site and retaining the information that they need. The foundation, we also focus on accessibility. We follow WCAG standards. There are a lot of checklists out there, so if you aren't sure whether or not you're meeting all the WCAG standards, feel free to look them up online. There's great tools out there. All of our pages, or all of our websites do have an accessibility component that we will be updating soon. But right now it has a read speaker function, color contrast, dyslexic font. You can increase the font size on the page. Once we upgrade, you'll be able to increase line spacing and letter spacing as well. One of the things we focus on, especially with this site, was color contrast. There's Adobe Color has a great tool where you can test your color contrast. It's free to make sure that your font matches or has enough contrast with the background, and if you are using color blocks, do those hyperlinks stand out? Also, for accessibility purposes, making sure there's alt text, area labels, and closed caption for those with visual and hearing impairments. Our font size is a minimum of 18 on all of our sites. And then for one of our websites, it's dedicated to seniors. We make sure there's additional letter and line spacing as well. We test all of our pages using tab-through navigation. It's the easiest thing to do. If you have an intern who's bored one day, this is a great project for them, just to sit there and tab on through. One thing that we are getting much better at with every website is making sure that our hyperlinks have a title, so that read speakers know whether, or they tell the user where they are going as well as what the hyperlink is. So if I do a link to Adult Protective Services, I need our users to understand that that is hosted on Department of Economic Security's website. But I don't want to put Department of Economic Security, Adult Protective Services in a button, because that would just take up way too much space. So if I throw that DES tag in the title, the screen reader will capture that. And then we host a lot of forums for our courts, and part of that is PDFs. PDFs are not the most accessible thing in the world, so we invest in ReadSpeak's PDF reader to make sure that it's accessible, and we also make sure that all of those lovely fields have tooltips encoded as well. Nora?
Yes, so again, we have a couple of guides and tools for you if you're interested. We have a self-audit design and content guide that you can find on legalhelpdashboard.org. And of course, so many government websites and other legal help and legal aid websites also developed their design guides. So there is no point for us to reinvent the wheel. We have collected and compiled all these guides on our website as well, so feel free to take a look. Going on to our third track, which is technical performance, and you'll see that this will overlap with the fourth track. So what is technical performance? What do we mean by that? By that, obviously, we mean how does your website function on the back end? So is it fast enough? Are there any security or bug problems? Are you using analytics or other tools to gather data about your website? So for this track, we'll have another great case study presented by Kathleen on the foundation of Google Analytics. So when we talk about your website, how it functions on the back end, there are certain things that we look at. We look at performance. So again, how fast is your website? Is it fast or slow loading? We look at accessibility, and this definitely overlaps with design as well. If you have huge resolution images on your website and you do not resize them, and they are in a certain format, it can cause your website, for example, to lag. So that's one of the things that we look at. And then we also look at things like SEO. Do you have analytics, Search Console? Do you have schema, which Erin and Marta will talk about, and track 4. So I'll hand it back to Kathleen for a portion about analytics.
So at the foundation, we analyze analytics monthly using Google GA4. So I apologize. I know there have been some analytics sessions, so if this is redundant, I'm sorry. But we compare our data month to month and year to year, just so we can report out to our stakeholders how successful or what changes need to be made to the websites. The graph that you see is from AZ Court Help. It was launched in 2017. This we compiled in Canva, and it shows the usage month to month and year to year. We just use, it's a good visual for our courts, so they can see the impact that the website is making. One of the things is be deliberate in what info or what analytics you compile. There's a lot out there. You don't need to capture all of it. I was explaining earlier, we stopped capturing location data at the foundation. We used to do a Arizona versus everybody else for our information. But with the rise of VPNs and websites like DuckDuckGo, you can't guarantee your users are where they say they are. So we've gone away from that. We have really embraced the exploration reports that exist in GA4. One thing to keep in mind is your default setting in your Google property is set to 2 months of data retention. Make sure that's bumped up to 14. Those are your only 2 options, 2 months or 14. So but the exploration reports make pulling your data more intuitive and a lot faster than it used to be, but also the filtering isn't as easy as it used to be either. So sometimes those filters, you gotta really play around to get the data sets that you need specifically. Also be aware that some of the terminology has changed, and the way they calculate bounce rate has changed as well. One thing that we do is exploration data we initially pull as a table, so we get all those lovely numbers so that we can compile our reports, but then we also make sure that we pull it in a visual form, because you never know if you're gonna have a weird anomaly. We had some, this is a too many cooks in the kitchen type of moment in the top graph, where we had two of our employees embed the Google Analytics code into our site, and so our bounce rate plummeted. And we would not have known that unless we'd seen it, because we were able to pin down exactly what day it happened and figure out who was doing what on the site that day. So we went in, fixed it, and like you see, it took a couple days, but we figured it out. And then everything went right back to normal. Or on the lower slide, this is our Law for Veterans website. We get this one spike every single year. It's a 10,000 person or user spike on Veterans Day, because we have one article on what is a veteran. And so we're able to point at our funders and go, look, there is a reason November just skyrockets, and it's because of this one article. So, but without us pulling it visually as well as numerically, we wouldn't know why or have an idea of what happened. So when it comes to technical performance, there's some other things to keep in mind. Broken links on your sites really do impact your Google search rankings. So we have a vendor that we use, brokenlinks.com, where they crawl our websites weekly, and we get email reports saying these are the errors you're receiving, and then we go in and we fix all of those. We also, if something happens with the servers, we get notifications from our server company. All of our content pages themselves, we implement helpful buttons, so the user can say, was this content helpful, yes or no? If they select no, they're given two options. One, I just need an attorney. And if they click that, they go straight to our online intake. Or they can leave a comment as to what is wrong with the page. We found before when we were doing surveys, people would just list their issues. We just want quick, little tangible things that we can address. So we look at these results monthly as well for the helpful buttons and go through and address what we can address. We also have a live chat feature where we have volunteer law librarians who are amazing, and they operate our live chat. And you're able to leave feedback for those operators as well. So we do go through and look at that, and we look at what users are asking the live chat operators for as well.
And then a quick note about the Lighthouse reports. So I assume that most of you are familiar with Lighthouse reports, but if you aren't, it's a really, really great tool which lets you see how your website is performing, especially on the back end. So one way to view a Lighthouse report would be to go to rankings.legalhelpdashboard.com. We have compiled a list of most of the legal help websites. If you search for your website there, you'll be able to open up the full report. And basically what the Lighthouse report shows you is, do you have any unused code? Should you resize your images to create a faster loading websites? Have you implemented schema? It really breaks down the things that are currently wrong or could be improved with your website and how you should do it. So as for tips and tricks, we'll talk about schema during track 4, and same with analytics and the Lighthouse reports, but we do have a few additional tools, and I'll hand it back to Aaron and Marta to discuss the tips and tricks.
Yeah, I think the biggest tip and trick is to go to legalhelpdashboard.org because they have so many resources on these topics. So if you take away one thing today, it's that. So one of the things that they talk about, backlink strategy, get people to link to you. That's good for SEO, especially if it's a government or school or other reputable nonprofit. Sitemaps, those are important. It tells search engines what your website, what the structure is. It's just a list of websites that you want the search engine to be aware of and to crawl. Keywords have gotten kind of a bad rap. Basically, remember all those websites with just lots of crazy random keywords, and they're just basically spam sites. But they're still important. Specifically, locality and topic, current events. So if you have an article on disaster relief in Texas, you'd want to mention the area that the disaster occurred. If it's like a named storm, you'd want to mention the name of that storm, and that will potentially help your SEO. So that's what I mean by keywords there. Formatting, just short titles, short summaries at the beginning of your comment. Page load time. She talked about Lighthouse, but just think about the videos and images that you put on your site. We want good, flashy, grabbing content, but also it needs to load fast or it's going to hurt your SEO. Advertising also, this is something I don't know a ton about. I think it's a very deep topic, but just be aware that Google Ads gives nonprofits $10,000 a month in free Google advertising, which is crazy. And I think you'd probably need to be a professional to really take advantage of that, but it's something to be very aware of that I think is underutilized. And again, legalhelpdashboard.org. Just tons of guidance.
Thank you for that. I promise we are not spamming you all. It's just that we've compiled all of our tools on that particular website, so we have one place to go through and to refer people to. So, okay, lastly, track 4. How easy is it for users to find your website? We talked about SEO and we mentioned schema a couple of times, and I'm sure that during these past days you've also discussed a lot of SEO stuff with your colleagues and peers here. So hopefully we'll be able to share something new. So when we talk about how to improve your SEO, we look at things like, do you have Google Analytics? Do you have Search Console installed? Do you have a schema markup? Does it work correctly? Do you have a backlink strategy? And have you ever done a search audit? And we'll share more about search audits during the case studies for today. But I'll hand it first over to Aaron and Martha for a piece about schema.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit too excited to talk about schema just because we've had so much success with it. What is schema? It's machine readable metadata in the back end of your web page that tells search engines what you're all about. So if you didn't build your website, you might already have schema. The developers might have put it in there, so it's worth checking before you go and worry about it. And it's really easy to check. You can just right-click on any page and select inspect. Yeah, view page source, not inspect. And you can see all the guts of the page. And if there's schema, you should be able to find it just by doing a word search for schema. Okay, so when we started with our schema journey, we started with the Stanford Legal Design Lab has a really great schema generator. It asks you questions and gives you kind of a pie-in-the-sky schema that you can potentially just paste on your homepage. And that's not what we ended up doing, but it did give us something to shoot for. It's like, this is what we would love our schema to be like if we could get it to that level. We ended up going with a plugin app instead of using just pasting it in. And we used an app called schema.org metatag, very original. There are other plugins as well. There are plugins for WordPress you could find. They're all over the place, but this is the one we used, and we're pretty happy with it. So the big thing is, as soon as we implemented schema, we noticed about a 30% increase in our search impression rate. And we can't attribute that 100% to schema because, one, you never know what Google's doing, and two, we were doing a lot of site improvements at the time, which will probably improve your SEO if you're creating a bunch of new content. But, I mean, 30% is a lot. So, and just to be clear, impressions is, that's when your content appears to somebody in front of somebody's eyes in Google search results. And so this is a graph from Search Console. If you don't have Search Console, it's a little bit newer than Analytics, so I recommend that you get it. It's extremely interesting and helpful. So you can see right there in the middle, that red line is about when we implemented schema, and that's the jump in our impressions. And you can see our click rate went up about the same percent. So it was showing the right people, the right content. So if you're going to implement schema, like we mentioned, there's the cut and paste method, or just typing it in directly, and there are these apps that make it a lot easier, but there are some pros and cons to each. Like, we went with the app because it automatically generates site-wide schema. Every page on Texas Law Help pretty much has schema now, after just a couple days of getting the app to work. And that's, 800 pages, 1,000 pages, like, it's a lot. It automatically formats everything. You don't have to worry about typos or even like programming knowledge. You don't have to be a programmer or a developer to get this to work. And even if you create new content, the schema will be there for that content. You don't have to worry about updating it for every piece of new or edited content. The downside is you don't have a ton of control. You're limited to the types of schema that are within the app. For example, there are legal topic codes that we would love to be able to put on Texas Law Help. Like, this article is about divorce, this article is about expunction, and the app that we use does not include that information, so we haven't been able to implement those codes. Yeah, and conversely, of course, pasting it in, you have complete control over your schema. That's the big plus. And the downside is you don't get every cool thing that we just talked about that the app does. It doesn't automatically update. You have to do it for every page that you want schema on. If you just want to paste schema on your homepage, that might be enough. Like, you can get a lot of mileage out of that, is my understanding. But if you have a big site and you want schema on every page, that's a huge task if you're going to do that manually. So just this way you don't have to worry about typos, you don't have to worry about human error using an app, but you also don't get all that functionality.
Yeah, and then just a couple of things about the search audits that we're running at the lab. This is probably one of the biggest projects for the cohort. So we have a project called the search audits. And search audits basically give you insight into what a user is seeing on the search engine results pages, also called SERP for short, from a specific zip code. So for example, we can see what users who live in Phoenix, Arizona see on their search engine results page for, let's say, the query, 2-week notice to get out by a landlord. And the data that we see there is we can obviously see where a legal aid or legal help website ranks. We can also see which pages are top ranked. So if we see a lot of misinformation or a lot of commercial actors, we can analyze that data and then really create a very specific, bespoke strategy on how to improve the SEO. For example, if we see that a legal help website is ranked low, we can look at things like, but is schema installed? What is your current SEO strategy? Do you have a backlink strategy? Basically everything that we just discussed. And then if we do this a couple of times a year, we can see whether the ranking has improved. And also, obviously, reach out to other commercial websites or court websites who are top ranked and figure out a way on how you can cooperate and work with them together. So this is something that we're currently running at the lab. As for tips and tricks when it comes to SEO and discoverability, I'll hand it back to Aaron and Martha.
So yeah, we mentioned the schema generator that asks you questions and gives you schema at legalhelpdashboard.org. And also, after you implement your schema, you want to test to make sure it works. Even with an app, there are still mistakes that can be made, and schema.org has a validator. You put your URL in, and it tells you whether or not it's valid syntactically. So that's very helpful. We mentioned backlink strategies and keywords. Yeah, and I think she just talked about the Legal Design Lab's ranking guide, which is pretty cool. Definitely check that out as well.
And then we have a couple of minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions, either about what we discussed or maybe even specific questions about problems or issues that you're struggling with, we would be more than happy to answer them.
So I actually just, if I could add a couple tips. So I'm a communications professional and I've worked in web content management systems for over a decade. So a couple of tricks on keeping people on your page and increasing those performance levels is when you're doing your inner links, if it's to an outside source, go ahead and have it open a new tab. But it often is possible, any links within your page, have it link in the same open tab. Because the longer you keep them on your page and make it easier for them to navigate to the original page they were on, the higher your performance rate's gonna go up. And then that read more, that click more, all of that. Download the ADA website compliance accessibility because it'll give you the language. Don't say click here. Let's say, for example, you're posting a job description. Don't say click here for job description. Actually write out housing attorney job description, and it will then do the SEO. And then final thought that I wanted to give, Google changes their algorithms like every 30 days almost. And December 1st, the algorithm just changed on how you appear on the search engine. And they are now giving more accessibility to people who are paying to be in those. So it's worth installing a plugin to enhance your SEO on your back end of your website. It's worth investing and giving the ability to get more creative with your content narrative underneath SEO, because that is really going to ultimately boost your page on higher levels. And as they continue to change their algorithms, you're going to keep bouncing. So just a couple tips I wanted to provide in addition to the website stuff.
Thank you.
I had two questions related, but one, I think there can be a little bit of a disconnect between programmatic staff and IT staff when you're talking about SEO. And so I wonder if you had tips in kind of translating what sounds like a marketing or business term for people that are more interested in outreach and communication. And then two, is there any guidance? I'm sure there is, but what do you guys have to say about chatbots or bots that are no longer linking to another page on your site, and how that affects your metrics for the site views, since the information is coming within the bot?
We actually don't have an operational bot on our site at this time, so that's not really an issue. And as far as the disconnect between staff and different sectors, we're a pretty small operation, at least our sector. And so we have a pretty close relationship with our developers, 4K, and the Texas Law Help team. So it's pretty easy, I think, for us to get on the same page. We meet regularly and discuss issues and email if there's a misunderstanding. So sorry if that's not super helpful for your question. But
I can kind of speak to what Arizona does in that field too. We also don't have a chatbot, so unfortunately I'm not able to address that. But when it comes to developing content, we have a content checklist that everybody needs to follow, plain language, and part of that is at the bottom of the articles, including, like, these are the keywords in my article, so that they have, and here's a short sentence description of what this article covers that then can just be copied and pasted into the meta keywords and description sections.
Yeah, just to reiterate, having a live chatbot is on our hopefully soon to be implemented wish list. And I guess internally, we do work closely with our communications team. Of course, there's push and pull because they don't always understand the need to convey legal information. But on the other hand, they think we speak too much legalese. So it's just a matter of keeping the lines of communication open with your communications department. But yeah, I mean, we work very closely with outside vendors. So.
You're saying you don't have a chatbot. You were talking about the AI tools earlier. I'm sort of wondering what limitations you were able to put. Like, were you able to limit it so that it's only discussing data from your own site?
Yeah, it works pretty well with the instructions we gave it. We told it to only pull from texaslawhelp.org and also a referral guide. That's just the Texas State Bar put together a big, huge PDF with the list of all the legal aid organizations. And I told the bot to only get information from those two things, as well as any partners that we link to directly on Texas Law Help. I don't know how well that last one works because I don't know how deep it goes into Texas Law Help, but it's almost all attributable to Texas Law Help. It does still hallucinate a little bit. It'll make up Texas Law Help articles and just give you like an empty hyperlink, which is embarrassing. It's not really dangerous because it's not telling somebody to go jump off a bridge, but it's also not helpful. So we're still dealing with that, but we're still testing it, but it's pretty good at just sticking to Texas Law Help content.
I guess I'm sort of wondering, like, quality control, how have you been able to then assess, are you looking at conversations that people have
I do think the constraints that we put on it, that's one of the main things that we've worked on. It has been effective. We haven't released this or even really done user testing, but we do have years and years worth of prompts, test prompts, because we have a live chat program. And so I take actual questions that people have asked attorneys and volunteers and sanitize them, of course, before I put them in the bot. But, and yeah, I haven't had it give anything really bad. Sometimes it's incorrect, and sometimes it'll be like, that's a little odd, but nothing really bad with the instructions as they are. And I'm hoping that I can tweak those and get it even better, because I'm not quite comfortable yet, because we haven't done super extensive testing. I want to test it 10,000 times, more than 500, for example, you know, but it's one reason I wanted to talk about it, because I just want to talk about how easy it was to get it to this point. It's just phenomenal, so.
See the conversations that people have had with it.
I'm the only person that has talked to the bot, but I have taken questions from real life people and fed that into the bot. It's not really long conversations at this point, just like, I had this issue, where can I find an answer, or something like that.
That may be an area where we can have law student volunteers test out.
This may be a weird question, but when I was thinking about if we were to test out a chatbot on our site and we would need to troll our bot, do you have any resources for trolling your bot? Because I don't know if I would be able to be creative enough to be able to troll.
Live chat responses.
Yeah, just I spend enough time on the internet. I know what kind of people are on it. Yeah, I don't have any other than just my own impressions of how I think the darker side of humanity is. I don't really have a lot of help with that. Like I said, we do have the actual prompts that we use, but I try and push it beyond that as well when I can.
We do have good and bad feedback from actual live chat users that we can rely on too.
You mentioned using specific phrasing for links to optimize the text for screen readers. Do you have any examples?
I think, like the one I gave, if you're linking to an outside source, you know, we have our online intake. So the button may say apply for online intake, but then the title, the descriptor would be AZ Law Help online intake, because it would take you off of your site and onto another. So then people would know they are being directed off of, you know, Law for Veterans or AZ Crime Victim Help, and they are going to another site.
Are there limits to what sorts of websites you guys want involved in the cohort in legalhelp.org, whatever it is?
It definitely has to live in the world of legal help, legal aid, and court websites as well. So we don't take any commercial websites.
Yeah, I think we've given Nora like 3 websites to analyze. So.
Yeah. I don't think there are any questions. So last plug, let's see if I can find the QR code again. There we go. Last plug for the Legal Online Help cohort and dashboard. We're just starting our monthly check-in sessions again in February. If you're interested in joining, you can follow the link through the QR code. Or if you're interested in viewing or reading more about the tools that we mentioned, they're all on the website. Or you can find me after the presentation to chat more about it. Thank you.